many promises to make his club safer, but he has failed each and every time. Those who have been violated, injured, and murdered there had to suffer the consequences of his negligence. My nephew Dexter Burrows was not the first nor the last of the persons on his lengthy list of victims. Will a massacre has to happen before the city opens its eyes and say enough is enough? This is a situation that is not to be taken lightly. Alcohol can and will induce violent behavior. We must do all that is possible to keep our young adults safe at any club, even if it means closing the doors permanently. What Mr. Williams is doing for the community is fine and dandy, but the actions of this man at the club late night paints a different picture. There are so many clubs here in Cincinnati area that these young adults can attend. Losing his club would be just fine. Young adults with the hip hop and the drinking, and I'm sure some of you probably listen to rap before this music and you're going and you're buzzing. Yes, there are so many other places to go to have a good time. We want our children to come home, say, I had a good time, I want to go out again. What is it going to take? He's not following any rules by anyone. No one. Slap on the wrist, I'm going to do better. No, that's not good enough. Please, I object.
Thank you. Ken Price. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee. My name is Kenneth Price. I am the cousin of Dexter Burrows, and I'm here also to support the family. Over the last 2 years, the family has been engaged in 3 focal areas relative to this case, this murder. One has been involvement in community relative to rallies. We've done petitions. We've met with youth in private meetings. We've also been involved with trying to find the killer. At the end of the day, the murderer is still somewhere out in our city, which is kind of odd because we have a club that had 700 people in attendance, and yet a young man, 21 years old, is now in the grave, and the killer is still in the city roaming. And thirdly, we've been involved with this process, and we've been faithful to this process, and to some extent, it's been demoralizing. This started with black media saying very disparaging things regarding this family. The weekend after the shooting, churches that have not participated in this process, irrespective of the fact that this club sits in the very heart where these churches are located. We've had numerous city leaders, those that are in leadership now and those in past times, that have directly or indirectly supported this club, notwithstanding the violence and the continued violence that has happened in this club. I was out of town in July of last year when I received a phone call that there had been a shooting in the club, and then to hear that a young woman was shot in her vagina inside the club. This club needs to close. It's not about African Americans. It's not about, I've had business in my family since 1968. I support black business in many ways in this town. This is about a public safety issue. In cities around the country, and I travel extensively, they become the way that they are because these single decisions don't get made. It's very easy to become Detroit, south side of Chicago. Temple University right around the corner is now a ghetto. It can happen to this town. It happens because people don't take the necessary steps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Smitherman.
I have a question for you. You mentioned the council member, Quinlivan, that the Roselawn board, there was a discussion about if they had challenged the liquor license or hadn't challenged. My question is, you stated that members of the business are also serving on the board. Is that what you?
Yeah,
Is that your testimony to
yeah,
members of the council?
Back when that discussion took place a couple of years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago, there was concern that the members that voted were part of the business community who had become part of the community council and participated in that vote. And there were some concerns. Again, though, anybody can become a member of the council. And I believe that the business community, some of the other bar owners were actually part of the Roselawn Community Council. And
Mr. Chairman.
That was a question concerning the vote. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, so there is a business entity in Roselawn, I'm
Right.
assuming, and there's also a community council.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm separating those two, and your testimony is that the owners of this club are also members of the community council and have voted to not oppose their own liquor license?
No, I'm not saying this particular club. I'm saying the owners of their businesses up there, members of the Businessmen's Association in Roselawn. That encompasses other clubs up there. Vito's was one of those, and he was a member of the Roselawn Community Council as well as the Businessmen's Association. And there were other businessmen. And there was, when it was determined that the Roselawn Community Council objected, did not object, there was some discussion that the vote was taken that some representatives of the business community were a part of the vote, including, I believe, Vito's and some of the others that own clubs up there. Now, I'm not saying that Mr. Williams was part of that. Who owns the club, which I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Sittenfeld.
somewhat random, but I actually was at the Roselawn Community Council meeting last night, and I feel very confident saying that the vote that was taken, and I remember you gave a presentation, not unlike the one you gave today, was probably not especially representative of the Roselawn community as a whole. I, of course, acknowledge that the community councils are the official arm of their neighborhoods to correspond with city council, and if memory serves, I mean, the vote was something like 10-8. Does that sound about familiar? So, I mean, it barely lost, and you're talking about 18 members of a neighborhood of however many thousands. So, for what it's worth, contextually, I don't think the lack of community support for the objection there should be looked into too much. Officer?
Just to give you a sense of how that worked, in order to present that case to them in enough time to then have them join in with this objection before City Council, they only had about 2 days beforehand, because the way they only meet once every month. I had to go up there that particular night, give them the presentation. So the vast majority of the neighborhood that may have participated did not have a month or even a week to have an idea that we would be having that discussion. It was whoever was there that particular night. As you described, the manager for Vito's is the vice president of that board up there. So there is some influence in terms of the business owners of that community onto the community itself's board. Not that it's bad one way or the other, but it would show how it could influence a vote. And again, as you mentioned, it was a very close vote that particular night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Smith.
I have a general question. I thought the policy was, and maybe it's not, that you have to live in a community to serve on the community council. That's not true.
No, you can own a business in that community. It depends on, now some of the communities have different bylaws and rules, but there's no standard policy that you have to live in a community. Some communities require that, others don't. I don't know the rules. Obviously, the rules of Roselawn is that if you own a business in that community, you can actually be on the community council.
Thanks, sir.
Anything further from the committee? Okay, all right, we will hold item number 7, and with that, that concludes the discussion. We will meet again in 2 weeks for additional discussion on this matter, and at that point, after that, council will take a vote. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Wow, that was fascinating. Yeah.